Attention shoppers, the new Atari cartridge game is in.
Excuse me.
Uh-oh. George again.
Ooh, Atari's ASCII battle.
It comes with 27 games, but that's just for starters. You can get 9 cartridges, 187 games.
Blackjack. Oh!
I'd like an Atari.
Sorry, only our demonstrators left.
Mine!
No, George. Mine.
The new video computer system by Atari. More games, more fun.
Growing up in the 80s, video games were a major part of life. And being born in the 80s, I basically got to experience almost every home gaming console when they were new. So the first gaming console I got my hands on was the Atari 2600. And for me, 2 games really stood out in the entire collection that was on that system. And they just so happened to be movie tie-ins to 2 of my favorite films of all time. Now here's the thing about Atari. A lot was left to the imagination with most Atari 2600 games. But these 2 games stood out to me not just because they were of the films I loved, but because at one glance, I knew what I was looking at. So let's start with my favorite.
Star Wars: The Empire Strikes Back, a great movie. Now a great video game. A movie which challenged your imagination. Now a video game where the challenge never ends. You saw Luke Skywalker battle the Imperial Walkers. Now bring the battle home. The Force was with Luke Skywalker. Will it be with you? Star Wars: The Empire Strikes Back video game. For your Atari and Sears video game systems from Parker Brothers. The ones to beat.
Here it is, The Empire Strikes Back on Atari 2600. Now, like I mentioned before, Atari left a lot to the imagination, but when you pop this game in, you instantly know where you are and what part of the film you're playing. We're here on Hoth, we're defending Echo Base. The walkers are on their way, trying to destroy the shield generator, and it's up to you in your snowspeeder to stop the onslaught. Atari was all about getting the high score. There wasn't really much in the way of beating a game the way that we have nowadays. They weren't cinematic, there really wasn't any story endings. You kind of left everything up to your own imagination for that. But when this came out, and I sat down, had the controller in hand, and took control of the snowspeeder, as far as I was concerned, I was Luke Skywalker, in the snowspeeder, defending Echo Base. This was one of the most amazing games I had ever seen. And things like this, where we actually got some of the soundtrack from the film, was a rare thing to happen in games at that time altogether. This was an awesome power-up that you'd get. You become invincible for a short period of time, so you could really take on the walkers as much as you could, and take as many hits as you possibly could before it wore off. The other cool thing was, when you land, or at least try to stick the landing, you can heal your ship. You can't do that infinitely, there was only so many times you could, but when you got that power-up, it was kind of like a recharge, and you could go ahead and recharge your ship again. Now, as you can see, this is pretty much what there is to this game. It's rinse and repeat. Try to survive, take on each walker as they're heading towards the base. Now, over time, these walkers will start to get faster. Try to think of Space Invaders, except instead of the enemies coming downward faster, they're going side-scrolling across the screen. So they're coming from the left side, and they're trying to get all the way to the right where the shield generator is. It's your job to stop them. And at the same time, get as much of a high score as you possibly can so you have bragging rights with all your friends. Each hit that you land with the laser is a single point, but when you blow up a walker, I think it was about 100 or so points you get in one shot there. Now, one of the things you want to look out for on these walkers was every once in a while, there's a little blinking square on them. And if you manage to land a shot right at that blinking square, it's an instant kill from that walker. I think this was the way they were trying to work around the fact that in the movie they used the tow cables to take down the walkers. You know, they even say in the movie the lasers aren't strong enough to take these things down, but there was limitations with the system, so I certainly forgive them for going with an alternative. Now, one of the best things about getting a high score is that when you get to about 2,000 points, you get an extra guy. As you go, they get faster and faster, and because there's limited soundtrack, you have to represent that somehow. You have the bar on the bottom to show where they are, but if you hear that low tone, that kind of constant thud happening, it gets faster and louder as they get closer to the base. It's certainly added a level of dread, you know, knowing that these things are getting closer and closer and you're trying to stop every single one of them. Now, they're infinite. There's no way to actually clear the board. When you think you're about to and there's only one left, another one shows up right behind it. In fact, the whole thing is a loop. If you were to go all the way to the right, you'll pop out the left side of the screen. So it was kind of fun to, on sometimes, get a chance to hit the guys that are coming up from the rear and then head back to the one that's up leading the way. But either way, it would just... It kept you entertained. It was a lot of fun. I know it's repetitive, but that's how games were back then. And nobody really minded that. And when you take a game that represents one of the greatest films of all time, and you actually get to be put in control, it's just so much fun. Yeah, you got to use your imagination, but you know what? There was nothing else we had to compare it to at the time. When I see this game, I still see it through a child's eyes. I see it the way I remember it, and I always will. Eventually, the walkers are going to make it to the end just like they did in the movie. They reach the shield generator, and in classic Atari style, the sky lights up, and it's over. It's amazing being able to still come back to these games that I grew up with. Playing The Empire Strikes Back on Atari 2600 was one of the best gaming experiences of my life, and it's one of those games that I love to go back to, obviously still to this day. And it was among so many great games on that system. I would play so many rounds of Asteroids, Space Invaders, Missile Command, Adventure. I mean, there was just so many games to choose from. But like I said before, there was one other game that really stood out to me, and it was one of my favorites, probably still is. The strange thing about that is that there is a large population of people that really hate this game. I honestly didn't realize that until I was an adult. And I couldn't think why so many people hated it. Eventually I heard the whole story about the rushed making of the game, and there was even an entire movie made by the angry video game nerds spoofing this game. So many people hate this game. But how could anybody hate this? Maybe there's something I missed. Let's pop this in. Let's see what I missed.